So with that, I'm going to kick it off. Good morning, St. Louis Council of Construction Consumers. This is one of our favorite events of the year. We had 200 people registered for this event this year, which is an increase from last year. I'm sure having a virtual format makes it easier for folks. My name is Monica Connors. I work in economic development for Ameren throughout the state of Missouri. I'm also the St. Louis Council of Construction Consumers Training and Education Chair. On behalf of the owner members and our executive director, I welcome you to the Council's Regional Construction Update. A few things to note before we get started. Please make sure you're in a quiet place and to mute your phone when not engaging during our Q&A. And actually for our Q&A, we'd request that you ask questions through chat so we don't have people talking over each other. We want to make sure everyone has a great experience today. I'd like to acknowledge our Training and Education Committee for their efforts in organizing today's program, and honestly for their efforts throughout the year. They had to pivot. We had to pivot in March from in-person to virtual, and I think despite the pandemic, we've had a good year and a lot of engagement. We thank the subcommittee for today's program. Christy Brinkman chaired that up with Castle Contracting, and we're looking forward to hearing from today's speakers. The council now would like to give a warm thank you to today's program sponsor, Husch Blackwell. Husch Blackwell has 700 attorneys in 19 cities and multiple practice areas with the specialty in real estate development and construction. Thank you for being today's sponsor. We'd also like to thank our annual program sponsors. First, our platinum sponsor, Cosney Wagner. Our gold sponsors are McGrath & Associates, Ross & Barazzini, and Husch Blackwell. Our silver sponsors are Farnsworth Group, Kaiser Electric, JF Electric, Hankins Construction Company, Abna Engineering, and OWH. Annual sponsorships are truly the best way to support the council and provides great exposure for your company in our region. This support means we get wonderful speakers like today, as well as wonderful venues, hopefully next year in 2021. If you're interested in sponsoring, please contact Kelly Jackson. An additional benefit of your participation today provides both professional development hours for professional engineers and learning units through the AIA. Documentation will be on the SLC3 website and was provided to you in the email sent with the link for today's program. So today we are going to focus on 4 key areas of the region. I'm continuing on as your moderator. First, we will learn more about the outlook of the region and new efforts in economic development from Jason Hall with the newly formed Greater St. Louis, Inc. Then we want to share what's in store for commercial development. We're going to hear from Larry Chapman with Seneca Commercial Real Estate. We've got David Kem again, a repeat offender with this presentation with Christner Architects. He will again give us survey results from the design community and engineering community on the outlook of architecture and engineering. And then Aaron Valentine is going to close us out with a construction update. Each speaker has been given 20 minutes, and we're going to have about 30 minutes of Q&A at the end. And I will be closing out our program at about 9:30. Again, please feel free to submit questions in the chat. We are going to hold Q&A though till the end. So just know that I'm not going to be calling out the questions until 9 o'clock. So with that, I would love to introduce our esteemed panelists. Maybe before I introduce Jason, in reflecting on today's program, I think one of the themes for this year, in looking back, resiliency was the big theme from the Great Recession in '08, right? I think if we can look at a theme this year with the pandemic, it's collaboration. We've all had to learn how to collaborate in new ways and differently. And our first 2 speakers in particular have excelled at collaboration. And I think that's one of the testaments of their success. So with that, I'll introduce Jason. Known Jason a long time. He's a native of Metro East. He is CEO of the newly formed Greater St. Louis, Inc., GSL, which is a new civic institution charged with driving inclusive economic growth in St. Louis, creating a unified voice, a bold agenda as one metropolitan area anchored by its urban core, something this region's needed for quite some time. GSL will be formed officially on January 1, 2021 through a combination of Alliance STL, Arch to Park, Civic Progress, Downtown St. Louis, Inc., and the St. Louis Regional Chamber. So with that, I'm going to mute, and I'm going to ask Jason to share his screen, and look forward to hearing what he has to say. And Jason, don't forget to unmute if you're muted.
All right. Can everybody see the screen okay? Showing. Well, good morning, everyone. And Monica, thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, it's been a pleasure working over a very long time. I will not put a number of years on it because it will age both of us in ways we don't want to, but it's been fun to work on economic development together. And I think that's a good foreshadow to what this next decade is going to look like now, because economic development will be different moving forward. And I'm excited to share this morning some information on Greater St. Louis Inc. You may have seen the announcement has been in the press following the unanimous votes of the boards of directors of the five organizations that it will unite. This is an unprecedented act of defragmentation for St. Louis, and I think really represents a new commitment to our future growth, and is incredibly exciting because really communities rise and fall on the quality of leadership, often from private sector businesses and families that take a long-term outlook on the place because it is their home and have pride in it and want it to have a stronger future. And I think the work is more impactful. I think it's more fun when we do it collectively, rising to put a community interest above our individual interest. And I'm going to protect that vigorously in Greater St. Louis Inc. But I think that's why it resonated so strongly with the boards and membership of the combining organizations. The legal integration, which will be achieved on December 31st at midnight, is obviously just the first step, but the team really has been working 7 days a week for months in order to make this as seamless as we can. But as we look ahead, legal integration obviously is just the beginning, and we are going to combine the strengths of those five existing organizations, but it's really going to have attributes of a startup organization in many ways. Just like the entrepreneurial companies that are invigorating our economy right now, which is why conversations like this are so critical, so that we can talk about where we go together with this new opportunity. We'll look here, as Monica mentioned, you know, amidst the global health pandemic that we're still confronting, the economic uncertainty, as well as a new civil rights movement that is playing out in this country in a vortex of national political change, I think St. Louis finds itself at an exciting juncture with a renewed optimism and confidence about what we can be. And I do think it is time for the St. Louis Metro to take ownership for our collective economic future and commit to being a growth region again. And that requires a thriving economy. And we've got to commit not just in word, but in deed. And we want to be that location of choice for young people in a place where everyone can reach their full potential. Because after all, at the end of the day, a good job is really the only sustainable and best social program that we have. And over the past few years, I and others have carefully studied other high growth metropolitan regions that we often talk about, and really discovered that they do coordinate their leadership and their business resources to improve the long-term outlook of the economy. In places like Pittsburgh, Des Moines, Denver, Nashville, and others, they often coordinate their leadership and their business resources around that long-term outlook and their philanthropy through a leading civic institution dedicated to making sure that economic growth is a top priority. It's like the art museum or the symphony of the economy that's constantly investing in and executing against a comprehensive economic growth strategy to win over the long term. And that needs to be supported at scale with a professional staff capable of performing the types of duties that requires to do this. But as much as it pained us to acknowledge it, St. Louis had really fragmented its private sector leadership, diluted resources with unclear responsibilities and accountabilities. And as a result, we've ended up with no widely accepted view or community ambition for what St. Louis's future economic prospects are. We are a place, I believe, that is greater than the sum of its parts. So Greater St. Louis Inc. represents a decision to build a leadership institution committed to St. Louis being a growth community, and it puts us on a path to combine the best of what we have with these legacy organizations and put them on that path to be best in class and drive growth with a unified voice, a bold agenda, and as one metropolitan region that is anchored by a vibrant urban core. We've talked about this in St. Louis for years. Now is the time we can do it. I will remind us, for all of the challenges that we often talk about, we start from an exceptional base. We are awash in assets and a strong foundation off of which to leverage. We are still the 20th largest metropolitan region. We have that strong Fortune 1000 base with 14 of those, and including this year welcomed Bunge, which relocated as a Fortune 250 headquarters out of New York to St. Louis to be a part of our thriving ag tech industry that is clustered here. We have a $170 billion regional economy backed by 83,000 businesses. That's the fourth largest in the Midwest. And a reminder that the metro economy in just our 15 counties is roughly larger than half of the individual US states. And then of course, one of the great civic accomplishments of this region over the past several decades, because of civic investments and long-term commitments that were made 20 years ago, we've regained our role in this country as one of the great startup and entrepreneurial hubs. In places like OPO, Cortex, T-Rex, the Danforth Center, we have a lot from which we can grow. As I mentioned, GSL is modeled off of best-in-class economic growth institutions around the US. High growth regions shape their economy through a singular institution dedicated to that purpose with a full-time staff that have the expertise, professionalism, and execution muscle to get things done. And again, that had been diluted over those five organizations. So now we will combine them. As Andy Taylor shared when he announced Greater St. Louis Inc. In the press, and Andy is the founding chairman of this, we have got to up our game. And some of those organizations on the left represent those best-in-class organizations that we've really studied quite closely. The Greater St. Louis Inc., this looks just functionally at some of the things that it needs to do. It really needs to do two things at the end of the day. You have to have a stable platform at scale that carries out those operational capacities that you need to execute on an economic growth agenda, like who's getting up every day to recruit new business to this region, who's getting up every day to shape our reputation. I often heard, why does Nashville and Pittsburgh, why are they always showing up in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and where's St. Louis? Well, the reality is, for all these civic institutions, we didn't even have a single chief marketing officer whose role was to get up and manage that reputation at the metropolitan scale. Secondly, you need a staff that really is skilled in designing, financing, and implementing those solutions to some of the challenges that we face. And we've got to be able to do that work at scale. So that really is on a functional level what GSL needs to do. Importantly, modeled off best in class, we have the STL Foundation. That will be a C3 or nonprofit vehicle that exists solely to support Greater St. Louis Inc. So some of the things that we need to implement, you can do on a nonprofit basis, and that allows us to optimize those revenue sources as we go to implement the agenda moving forward. As I mentioned, I'm going to be very protective of this as the CEO. I think it's important to know and remind ourselves civic institutions must lead with trust and influence. We are very different than business, just pure business. Businesses have ownership, they have organizational chart control. That's a very different dynamic for getting things done. The public sector, equally important, and I've already told our folks, we don't show up saying government's bad. Government has very different kinds of levers that they can use to get things done, and they have a broad legal mandate by duly elected officials. Civic institutions sit in the middle of that, and I think need to build trust with the community in order to carry out its mission. On day one, as I mentioned, where we have combined the strengths of these existing organizations, we will be driving 8 key growth initiatives on day one as we get started. And I will go back here, and this is how they'll show up visually. As you know, over the last 24 months, for example, we just recreated the business recruitment capacity of this region. So who gets up every day, finding those leads and facilitating the site selection process to bring new business into the metro. And we did that about 24 months ago with the Alliance STL, and it put up a big win. That's the mechanism by which we brought Accenture Federal Services and 1,400 new high-paying, high-tech jobs to this region, one of the largest business recruitment projects. And I will tell you, the Nashvilles, the Denvers that we all talk about, they've been doing this work for decades and perfecting how that happens. We've been doing a lot of work around the geospatial industry and how we leverage in the way that Bill Danforth and John McDonnell did for biotech 20 years ago. How do we take the opportunity of the nearly $2 billion NGA West headquarters so that St. Louis can be a global industry leader as geospatial and location technologies start to permeate the commercial sector? So we'll be driving that work forward. Importantly, GeoFutures represents the new way of doing business. It is believed to be one of the first industry sector strategies in the United States to intentionally center racial equity from the start, as we work to make sure that not only do we thrive as an industry sector, but that the existing residents whose neighborhood into which the NGA is moving benefit as well. STL Made, I know many of you have participated in that. That represented a multi-million-dollar commitment to start getting the St. Louis story out there again. And we've been doing that to build regional pride and highlight the change makers, the doers, the people that get up every day to move this region forward in a positive way. And we'll be working on taking that story even more national in 2021. You may have seen more recently, we have inherited, that was originally financed by Civic Progress, the STL 2030 Jobs Plan. The St. Louis metropolitan region has not had a metro jobs plan in over a decade. That is highly unusual for a top 20 metro market, and I think a reflection of the fragmentation that we faced. Bruce Katz was brought in to lead a process, formerly of the Brookings Institute, and also served in the Clinton administration. He's also been working with the Biden administration on things right now in the transition, has been helping facilitate that process of our first metro jobs plan. We took the unusual step, which is not common for a jobs plan, to do broad scale public engagement. And in fact, my call right after this is with 200 of the United Way agencies that we're having a deep discussion on, but doing that throughout the region so that we all have a chance to weigh in on this. Importantly, that jobs plan looks not only at growth, but inclusive growth. So what are we doing to make sure that we use the power of the economy to close those unacceptable racial inequities that we must confront in this region and in this country, so that we can move forward. And I would, oftentimes we talk about, the negative headlines, but it's a reminder, we also have to shape those headlines through leadership. I just put up here, some of those headlines that have been generated over the last 12 months as we have led through collaboration on the economic development sector, a collaboration we will make permanent through this merger, some of the things that we've been working on, like geospatial, like breaking through the Del Mar Divide. The Arch to Park Real Estate Fund has supported Kevin Bryant in his pioneering work to break through that. Downtown St. Louis has not had a comprehensive plan in 20 years, since Downtown Now. We just got that done, approved by the City Planning Commission, and we're going to be working to implement that Design Downtown plan. Medicaid expansion. Val Patton, who is one of my co-incorporators and will serve as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, a newly created position for the private economic development community, and she will also be the president of the foundation. She and I actually teamed up earlier this year with the Missouri Foundation for Health to help advocate or educate statewide on Medicaid expansion, which we know is a proven job creator, and it was one of the calls to action in the Ferguson Commission report, because we know Medicaid expansion can help confront and close those racial, the health inequities that were exposed again in the pandemic. We also worked as a business community. A lot of people don't know this. We worked to operationalize and stand up the pandemic task force, which has been critical under the leadership of Dr. Alex Garza. It is a reminder of what we can accomplish when we prioritize collaboration over fragmentation. And I applaud our health systems and public officials for coming together in that way. The jobs plan, I would encourage everyone to go to greaterstlink.com and take a look at the jobs plan, provide input. There's a place on the website to do that, or participate in one of the many community forums that we'll be having. Next month, we will have some new broad scale ones. On the 7th, the St. Louis American and KSDK are hosting a forum on the jobs plan, and on the 10th, teaming up with the Business Journal. In the blue circles, though, we represent some of those top-line strategies that are coming out of the jobs plan. It is just a draft, and it is a draft for a very specific reason. There's been hundreds of people involved in helping shape it, but we need more engagement as we look to put that in final form and move forward. Below those top-line strategies, I would just highlight some of the initiatives that will support those strategies around which there's been a lot of energy. Things like the Supply STL initiative to do at scale the large regional purchasers that have large regional supply chains. This calls for them to come together, use that purchasing power to help leverage and scale small and medium businesses with a strong focus on diverse owned businesses. That is one of the ways that we can act with intention to make this a more equitable community. As I mentioned, Andy, Val, and I have incorporated Greater St. Louis, and this is the new 501c6 into which those legacy institutions will merge and combine, and we will complete that on December 31st at midnight. The local media has responded very favorably to this unification. I think people saw the need for a better way and knew that the current system was not serving St. Louis to reach its full potential. We are building and bringing together 5 different investor programs. We invite anyone that wants to be engaged in this mission to participate. We are broadening the base so that there is a way to invest in this mission that is affordable and accessible to all. And we will have investor forums, ways for members to get engaged, be recruiting a board, and we're going to create a lot of action teams so that you can work side by side with your peers, not on your individual interests, but doing those things that drive an agenda forward for the region and work on those implementations that we need. And this just summarizes some of those engagement opportunities. Again, as Andy shared with the press, we have got to up our game. I will tell you, we often talk about Indianapolis, for example, as a high growth Midwest region, and they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done over there. They are a third smaller metro than St. Louis. They have twice the operating budget that Greater St. Louis Inc. will have, combining 5 organizations if every dollar of revenue from 2020 migrates to 2021. We are not in the Cadillac yet, and we do not have the capacity to reach our full potential. And we're just not investing at the same level that other regions are. It is what it is. So we got to up our game, and we're committed to doing that. Of course, legal integration, as I mentioned, is just the beginning. We are not going to have all the answers. Again, this is going to be startup, and we need your feedback, your input, and be honest. I think that's the way we need to move forward as a region, is with more honest conversations. As I told Civic Progress when I spoke at their last meeting, this is not going to be scripted kind of stuff. We need to have healthy tensions. We need to work through issues as a family, and let's move forward. That is normal, that is healthy, and that's the way we need to do this. I will end on a positive note that I hope rallies us to this cause. You may have seen recently Entrepreneur Magazine, one of the national publications focused on the startup community, produced a really important article about the 8 heartland cities that are essential to the future of American innovation. In that article, they point out that over the last decade, 90% of all the high-tech jobs have largely been created and concentrated in a few elite coastal markets. And they were looking at really those cities in the Midwest and in the heartland that are driving innovation forward. Our hometown, St. Louis, was #1 on that list. And the language they used is that we are on the precipice of leading the United States in 21st century innovation. And they gave us a shout out for spending the last decades to build the infrastructure. And we all know the startup community, the innovation community, that really has become a backbone. It has become a point of pride of St. Louis at this point. It didn't happen accidentally. It is a reminder that when we come together in a collective leadership model, as we did, remember, the vision around startups is what gave us Cortex. It's what gave us the Danforth Center, the first venture capital, the first entrepreneur support organizations. That didn't just fall from the sky. That came from intention, and that came from a long-term commitment. So we can do big things. We can shape our economy, but it will require us putting that collective community interest above our individual interest and acting in different ways than we have in the past. But we can do this, and that's what Greater St. Louis Inc. will be, is a platform where we can come and do that together. So I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update for you on this, and look forward to the conversation around it at the end. So thank you.
Wonderful. That was fantastic. I'm so excited. So thank you so much, Jason. Our region's definitely going to take it up a notch. So our next speaker is Larry Chapman, President and CEO of Seneca CRE and Chapman Ventures. Larry is a licensed Missouri real estate broker. He's devoted his entire 40-year career to real estate development. He's been involved in some, honestly, some transformative projects in the region. North Park, for example, has really been a game changer for North County. And, we're excited to hear what he has to say today. His adopted hometown of St. Louis, he has a transplant. And so I think he's got that broader perspective that we're looking forward to hearing from today. So Larry, without further ado.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you all today. I enjoy doing this kind of thing. I don't do it enough, but it's always fun to do, and I always learn a lot when I'm doing it. And I do want to say, before I talk a little bit, the Greater St. Louis, if we really do that, that will be a game changer. My single biggest gripe has been the fragmented way the city is operated particularly when we talk about trying to attract business here. People get very confused. I've talked to lots of companies that have moved here or thought about moving here. And if we could get one single source that is the consistent storyteller for us, it will be a huge deal and could be really great for the city and really start attracting companies in. When I was here in the 80s, I was watching companies leave a lot, and it wasn't fun to watch. And I think there's a real opportunity here to do that. So, whatever support we can give to Jason and his team, we should be doing that any way we can. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you the big story about how I'm going to save St. Louis or anything like that, but I will tell you that in my own way as a developer, I'm always trying to find a way to do things that can be helpful. I hope we're getting a lot of good data about the city. I think we'll get some more data going on. I tend to do things by gut and intuition, and I run out and just do projects, and then I look at what the projects do, and that tells me what to do next. And so what I thought I would do is maybe in a second here, share my screen. I don't know if you need to give me permission to do that, or if I can just do it, which I'll do in a second, and share a few projects. From a personal level, as Monica was saying, you know, in 2018, well, from 2008 to 2018, I mostly was doing projects outside of St. Louis, not in St. Louis. It was just easier to do. It's unfortunate that it was, but then in 2018, I just made a conscious decision. I'm going to come back to St. Louis. I'm going to only work on St. Louis projects and find a way to be more important and helpful to the community. And so that's kind of where I am now. And to do that, you know, I focus on things like creating jobs, finding ways to create projects that create jobs, and finding ways to do things that are a little bit different that maybe help the community as well. And so I'm going to jump down and share a screen. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of projects I've done over the last year and a half, and hopefully I can just do that. Let's find the one I want. So the first one is a project that I call Edge at West. It's part of a new series of office buildings we designed that's focused on the occupant of the building, the actual people who are there, not the companies themselves so much as the employees that will be in the building. And the idea was to create an environment where the employer would have the best opportunity to recruit, retain, and keep their employees, because it was just a really fun place. So it focuses on amenities more than anything. I think it's a cool building to begin with, but if you look at the design of the building, you can't see it, but if you look right here, those little guys, they're roll-up doors. So in the common areas, when the weather's nice, you can open them up and let the outside in, the inside out. And these buildings are designed to be amenity rich. So the employees have a lot of space. They can easily distance for however long we have to do that, but at the same time have some refuge places away from their offices so they can go in and work and plop out and find a great place to go. We're very excited about these buildings. The people, once they get in them, they can kind of see them. You know, we're the show me state. And so as this project comes online in Q1 of 2021, I think we'll do really great. COVID notwithstanding, you know, COVID kind of threw us all a curveball. I think we can all really agree on that. And hopefully by the latter part of this year, that'll all be behind us. But even so, we have to think about COVID. So the new buildings we had already planned this, have things like plasma filters in that kill microorganisms, not just filtration. They also have little kiosks so that when you walk in, it'll take your temperature and issue you a sticker so you can prove to everyone you're safe for that day, and automatic opening doors and things so you don't have to touch surfaces. Just a lot of little things like that you'll find in these new buildings that we hope will be really wonderful and helpful in attracting people. The first tenant for this building will be FM Global. We're also going to move in a company called Edison Spaces. It's similar to a Regis concept. It includes large private offices, so it's not a WeWorks format where you share offices, but you can shift people in and out. And we think it'll be very successful. We also have really big open gathering places for fun, fireplaces, and in this building, we'll have a fully functional coffee shop serving Caldi's coffee. And so we're very excited about that. But when we were working on this building and planning it in West County, I had an opportunity to go meet with the folks at Benson Hill. Their deal on Helix wasn't working. We were in fear that they would keep their headquarters in North Carolina. So we went and spent some time with them, and we designed a sister building called Edge at Bridge. This building's on the Danforth Plant Science Center campus, their Bridge Park campus. This is their new headquarters. This is an actual picture, not a rendering. And they're in occupancy now, not fully occupied, but this is a fully lab-enabled building. And it allowed us to keep Benson Hill here and growing. And they occupy 3 of the 4 floors of the building, and there's some space there for others. Again, it's wide open areas, a lot of areas for contemplative refuge. And then the other thing we're doing in our buildings now, I don't know if you see that, these are phone booths, soundproof phone booths. They don't have actual phones in them, but places for people to go so that they don't have to worry about things like not having privacy. And then here's a picture of a Benson.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
Don't mean to interrupt. Could you try sharing your screen again? Folks are having trouble seeing the images.
Okay. Let me go back. Where is that? Let me get down here.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Are you not?
Ah, there you go.
Let me get to the picture back now. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I don't have my picture, unfortunately. I can't see which one you're looking at.
Right now we've got, yep,
Are you there?
we are on
So
bridge.
this is Edge at Bridge. It's at the Danforth Science Center Bridge Park campus. This is where Benson Hill's headquarters is. Hopefully you can see that. I'm sorry I didn't check in earlier. Should have done that, obviously. Big mistake on my part. Can you see this now, Monica?
Yeah, that looks great. Thank you.
And so this is the interior. These are the interiors we have at the buildings. They're super large living room spaces. You can see a little mini mart over here in the corner. You can see the phone booths over here that are fully soundproof. And then behind that wall that you see there is a fitness center. And behind that is a multi-purpose room that, you know, when we can start doing yoga classes and similar things, they're set up to go there as well. It's all about the occupant experience. And we think that's where the world is going. We don't think that companies need to figure out how to do that in their space. They'd like to be in buildings where their employees can enjoy that and then they can focus on their business and a little bit of space they have. In the case of Benson Hill, this is their lab area. It's about 30–40% labs. And so they're a huge ag tech generator for St. Louis. And you know, it's interesting, we're getting lots of other companies coming in. And we were talking about growth and jobs. One of the things that I'm hearing about now, and there's some experimental operations going on, but could be great for, you know, even areas in North St. Louis. They're looking about doing indoor farming, which is pretty fascinating stuff. The cost of operating these things with LED lighting, if they can get the heat thing figured out, they can deliver really great produce for about the cost of organic, which is a little higher. And before too long, it'll be fully competitive, and they can grow it right here in St. Louis, deliver it here in St. Louis, and the jobs are great. You can get everything from a almost unskilled job to a high skilled job. So it's a great place to bring in new employees and train them in the ag tech sector. So I'm hopeful we're going to see more of that over the next several years. In addition to doing things like this, because it's always great to do big, important, you know, office buildings and things of that nature, we also think we should be doing some more fun things. And I don't know if can you see the 9 Mile Garden thing up there? One of the things we thought about, and we did this down in South St. Louis County, and we'll probably do more of them, is, you know, the communities are dying to do things outside. They're dying to have gathering places where they can have community events. So down in Afton, we built 9 Mile Garden. It's been open for the summer. It's a little odd in COVID. We're outside. We have circles painted on the ground so we can keep people in groups, but it's kind of nice. And really what it is it's a food truck park. And so we have places for the food trucks to come in and stop. We rotate them daily with some different trucks coming in. We've got about 40 trucks in a club that rotate in and out. And basically people just hang out. We've got a huge outdoor screen TV that they can watch sporting events or they can watch movies and have movie night. Over the left is our canteen where you can get a refreshment. And then you can see there's some live music that happens to be going on here. Here's a night shop, but it's just a fun thing to do. And I really believe that the more of this kind of thing that we do in the community, the better off we'll be as a community. And so, I look about what that means going forward, and I see in St. Louis today some really great things that are happening. Number one is the investment dollars are coming into town. There's been so much money out looking for great investments. First, they went to all the biggest markets. Now they're kind of moving into St. Louis a little bit, and we're seeing cap rates, and I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but purchase prices going up because the return people are expecting going down, that I'm seeing in markets like Atlanta coming here, getting close. And I've never seen anything like that. Well, when the investment dollars are looking at St. Louis, it makes it easier for every developer and everybody trying to do business here to buy money inexpensively. And it gets focus from banks and other organizations outside of St. Louis. And I will tell you that my experience has been that if you go to investors outside of St. Louis, they're more bullish on St. Louis than people are inside St. Louis. And so I find it easier to borrow money from foreign banks, foreign not meaning not St. Louis, than it is here. I hope that changes, but it's still a good thing, and it bodes well for our opportunities to do fun projects. The other thing I would tell you is that, you know, and again, I'm going to kind of look at GSL, Greater St. Louis Inc., is that, you know, we need to tell a really great story about St. Louis, and we've got really great stories. I just don't think we've told them effectively. I was sitting in an interview with an executive for Benson Hill, and as they started talking about living in St. Louis, because they were used to living on the coast, the guy actually stopped for a second. He said, you know, you mean to tell me I can buy my house and buy a house at the lake and do all of those things and in a better, bigger house than I could where I am now? And they're like, yeah, you can. So we need people to understand they can come here and enjoy a low cost of living, that they can enjoy quality jobs in a quality environment and have fun things to do, which we need to do more of. You know, the 9 Mile Gardens of the world are some. We're seeing entertainment venues come all over the place. I'm really excited about the Armory going to an entertainment platform. You know, how great is that? I'm really hopeful that the Foundry will get up and running in a big way. And these are fun, exciting things. And, you know, the ideas of the Cortexes, you know, I remember 13, 14 years ago, I was part of building the first Cortex 1 and then the Soleil building, which is now DuPont, when it was just starting. And now with an entire amount of focus, and focus being the key word, having a long view and having patience and tenacity at the same time will really get the job done. And I hope we bring that to St. Louis and greater STL. I think that's probably the best thing I've heard in a long time. And I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but it really, really is. Telling the story about how wonderful this environment can be, and really not short discounting ourselves. And we have a tendency to discount ourselves. We have to talk big and bold, and we need to do big and bold things. I mean, I would love any leader to just decide to do things, even though they sound crazy. I tell you, as soon as you get it done, everybody will jump on the bandwagon and want to be part of the success. So just go do things. Don't wait, just do. And I'm hopeful that Jason and greater STL will have a lot of opportunity to do that, because that's what we really need. And I think the forecast is very bright, but only if we all decide we want it to be. And so, you know, that's where I am. I hope I get to continue to be a part of this community for a long time, and I'm going to stay focused, and I'm going to turn it off right there. I could probably talk forever, but I don't want to do that. And I'll let the program continue on. So thank you, Monica, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Larry. I think you just came up with a new tagline for us. Don't wait, just do. I love it.
That's
all right,
I can do.
That's right. So we'll catch back up with you at the 9 o'clock hour for Q&A. So next up, we've got David Kem. He is here to give us an update on St. Louis design. David is a St. Louis native who graduated with a bachelor's degree in architecture from Kansas State University. He's practiced architecture in St. Louis since 1987. He is a shareholder at Christner, a 50-person design firm located in St. Louis that focuses on 5 markets: corporate, healthcare, education, science and research, and cultural. David's very active with the council. He's served both on the membership committee, he's co-chairing the golf committee next year, and he's been involved on the strategic planning committee. And he has provided this update for a number of years now, so I know we're all excited to hear what this year has in store. So the screen is yours, David. Thanks.
Thanks, Monica. And thanks everybody for joining us today. You guys see my screen okay?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. So again, this will be a design forecast for, and hopefully my slides will advance unlike last year. I don't know what it is with this program. I already ran through the slides twice today. So let's try something else. Okay, I don't know what it is with this program. It just doesn't like. All right, we're gonna do the same thing we did last year.
Okay.
So, you guys see it okay?
Yep, you're good.
All right, so we've got the, there's my mouse. So we're gonna do a forecast for the architecture and engineering firms in the St. Louis metropolitan area. And similar to previous years, I'm gonna start off with the Architecture Billings Index. And I've got a 25-year look back. And if you can see my the cursor will show up. This is our dip that occurred right when the pandemic hit, and everything was moving along just fine back before, obviously, the pandemic hit. And when I did the forecast last December, things had recovered a little bit. We had a slight dip in September and October. If I can get this slide to show up. So last, let's see. Yeah, last September, October, things were starting to come back up again. And then we took a dip in, here we go. So last fall, things were looking great. When the pandemic hits, we take a severe dip down to about 30 on the ABI. And for everybody who's not familiar with the ABI, a score above 50 means that the billings for that month are above where they were from the previous month. And anything below 50 means there's a score, is that the billings are down from the previous month. And so we took, we hit bottom about, I guess, April for the ABI, and we've been slowly recovering since. And then the most recent score in October was a score of 47.5. And this is actually better than I thought it would be. When everything started slowing down, I thought we were gonna be down for a longer period of time. And so if things continue, and this is the most recent month, again, of October at 47.5, we may see the report that comes out next week. We could be above 50. I'm hopeful for that. And again, this is doing better than I thought it would be. I thought we'd be down for a longer period of time than this. So I'm very encouraged by the ABI scores that we're seeing around the country. And then I'm gonna move into the local forecast. So again, I met with, or got on the phone with a number of firm-wide principals around town, including myself. We have 15 firms that I got reports from, about half architecture, about half engineering firms. As I go through each of the comments briefly, they are not in order of what you see here on the participants, trying to protect people a little bit. Maybe they'll speak more freely about what's going on with their firms. And this year, I also asked everybody, how has COVID impacted their firms as far as maybe furloughs or layoffs or pay cuts, if they were comfortable sharing that information. If not, I totally understand. So I have some comments on the slides for that information as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. So this engineering firm does a variety of work around town in different markets. And as you can see, some of the work, some of the markets are slower than others. Such as commercial, no surprise on the hotel hospitality side of things. Healthcare is coming back, education is solid, and multifamily is strong. They haven't had to do any furloughs or layoffs or pay cuts yet, but they're unsure going into the first of the year. This architecture firm, 2020 was one of the best years ever for this firm. Healthcare is strong currently after stopping briefly at the start of the pandemic. Higher education has exploded, especially for allied health and science and tech projects, but residential and student union projects are a little slow. But the workload looks strong for 2021, and they're going to continue hiring into 2021, which is a great sign. This engineering firm has been able to maintain staff levels throughout the pandemic, and they anticipate keeping current staff levels through at least the first quarter of 2021. Healthcare, especially ambulatory surgery centers and medical office buildings, are strong in St. Louis and their other office locations, and manufacturing is strong. And community college work is active as enrollment is up. And then they're seeing something this is unique for this firm. They do some work with private developers for solar fields, not just out in the Southwest, but actually up in Michigan, and they're seeing some business with that. This engineering firm has been busy the entire pandemic. They've actually hired 2 people recently, doing a lot of work for IDOT. They're doing work for Great Rivers Greenway and Madison County Trail System. But they do expect a downturn in local municipal work due to decrease in sales tax revenue. But they anticipate a 10 to 15% increase in firm revenue for 2021. This engineering firm is, they've had no layoffs during the pandemic. They could hire 2 people if they could find them, but people are reluctant to change jobs right now for fear of being last in, first out in case of another downturn. Logistics for e-commerce is hot, which is no surprise. And again, no surprise that maybe logistics for brick and mortar stores are cold. Multifamily is very busy, both locally and regionally. This firm let a few contract employees, this architecture firm let a few contract employees go early in the pandemic, but they're busy right now, looking to hire a couple professionals now and maybe another one early in 2021. Multifamily is very busy. Healthcare not as strong for them as it was in 2019. And then not a surprise for a lot of firms, the corporate office work is slow. This engineering firm let 2 people go early in the pandemic, currently looking to hire a few people. IDOT and tollway work was strong at the start, but has since slowed down. Transportation and infrastructure are slow, but hopeful they will return. Little commentary here on the gas tax is not the way to fund infrastructure projects with more fuel efficient cars, electric cars, and people driving less. So that's something the states need to look at. And then with higher education, possible consolidation, transformation of campuses due to better utilize underused spaces and an opportunity for maintenance type work. This architecture firm is holding on to current staff. They might hire 1 person early in 2021. Things look busy for the next 3 to 4 months. For this firm, actually, hospitality and event spaces are fairly strong as some of their clients are taking advantage of the pandemic to renovate their spaces. But restaurant work is slow. And they do single family work, which is obviously very strong these days. It seems like everybody's doing something to their houses. This engineering firm has had no layoffs due to the pandemic and actually gave raises to non-executive staff in June. They significantly reduced new hires, but they did not pull back any new hire offers when the pandemic hit, and they still had summer interns. They had a strong backlog when the pandemic hit. Would have been a record-breaking year, but 2020 will wind up being a good year. Strong markets are federal, industrial, and cannabis. Healthcare obviously took a dive for a while. And for this firm, higher education and corporate office work is currently slow. This engineering firm let go about 8% of their staff early in the pandemic, but things have leveled off. They took advantage of the time they had available to do a lot of research and development for their business. Increase in competition on RFPs where they used to have 5 competitors, they now have about 15. So that's a bit frustrating. Federal is steady, not much change. There's a lot of mechanical opportunities going forward due to the pandemic as far as air filtration systems and UV lighting. And then on aviation and transportation, new opportunities have slowed down, but there are also new design opportunities to buttress the pandemic as far as smart restroom design, thermal scanning to take individuals' temperatures, virtual queuing for appointments, and then rapid testing prior to boarding flights. Let's see, this architecture firm has had no furloughs, layoffs, or pay cuts to date. Typically, you get a lot of business from conventions, but obviously this year that was not a possibility. Multifamily is very strong. Adaptive reuse is strong. Hospitality is doing okay. Firm is expanding to be more regional, and they expect to, 2020 was actually a strong year after 2019 being a disappointing year for this firm. This engineering firm will hit their 2020 revenue forecast. They added a few new employees recently. Higher education and healthcare are holding steady. Obviously, aviation and transportation was hit hard. But corporate research and development is strong. And then their government work is going gangbusters, best year ever, military bases, CDB, jails, VA, and infrastructure projects. This engineering firm has had no furloughs, layoffs, or pay cuts yet. They're seeing much smaller projects. Clients are bidding small projects they would have previously negotiated. Retail is dead. K-12 is strong. Military is slowing down a bit. But overall, this firm is holding their own. Let's see, this architecture firm has had a slow summer for new inquiries, but lately it's turned into a steady uptick this fall. Hospitality has vanished for this firm. Industrial is very busy. Multifamily and corporate is busy. And this firm expects to be busy for the next 6 months. And then finally, this architecture firm had a strong backlog of work when the pandemic hit. Thankful that clients didn't stop projects, but they had to furlough 5 people October 1st, instituted pay cuts November 1st. with the hope that things would turn around in January, February. But a funny thing happened along the way. There was an election quickly followed by vaccine announcements, and the floodgates have opened wide with new projects and a ton of RFPs, RFQs since early November. The new projects are smaller. Some of them are missed in 2 zeros in square footage and or fee. And they are reinstituting full salary January 1st. Healthcare steady, higher education is very strong. K through 12 is strong, cultural slow, and then corporate office is actually surprisingly seeing an uptick in work and opportunities. So in summary, probably about 90% of the firms I've talked to are busy to very busy, and the first half of 2021 looks good. And I can tell everybody, when I agreed to do this survey again about 4 months ago, I was not looking forward to this. I thought this was just going to be an awful forecast, but things have obviously turned around. And so thankful for that. You know, again, markets that are strong are multifamily, industrial, and federal. Projects or markets that are steady are healthcare, higher education, K through 12, and actually corporate office is a little steady. And then markets that are weak, aviation, transportation, hotels, retail, and local government. And so I hope this isn't, if those of you are familiar with this term from the financial markets, there's a term called a dead cat bounce. And I hope that's not what we're experiencing right now. I hope that everything continues to recover into 2021, and we can keep moving forward and have a great year ahead. So thank you very much, Monica.
Great, thanks, David. We'll catch back up with you on Q&A. We are running ahead of schedule, so maybe plan on be prepared for maybe 10 to 9. So next up, we've got Erin Valentine. Last but not least, Erin was recently promoted to Vice President of Business Development at McCarthy. She focuses on markets including healthcare, commercial, education, and advanced technology and manufacturing. As a member of McCarthy's leadership team, she guides their strategic business operations across their 28-state central region. She's recently an empty nester, so she's got more time to get out there, and we're excited to have her today. So Erin, you're up next.
All right, thank you, Monica. Let me see if I can get this right. All right, you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Where you went? Okay. So appreciate everybody hanging on and the opportunity to share an update and forecast for our construction in our region. This year has been trying for all of us personally and professionally, and I have to begin today to thank each and every one of you for your leadership and your dedication and your efforts to keep our local construction industry moving and keeping our workers safe and healthy. It's not an easy task in normal times. This year has been a challenge, but also a testament to the quality of leaders and individuals that we have in our region. I know that there are firms struggling, and David touched on some of that, and others have adapted and are doing well. And we've talked about there's some good things coming, there's some good things happening. So let's keep working together to make our region strong. You know, and similar to what David just said, as I prepared for this, I took a look back at what Dirk Elsperman had shared and the forecast and the bright picture of things to come in 2020. And it did not turn out the way we thought it, but it is good. There are good things happening, and we have figured out how to adapt and collaborate throughout this challenge. So I'm going to dive in here. Get this moving. Oops, too fast. Okay. So the agenda for today, I wanted to take a look at 2020, the impacts on the pandemic on the construction industry, and then look at 2021 and beyond here locally and then nationally. So 2020, call it the roller coaster. Coming in the year, the future looked bright, particularly here in St. Louis. There were a lot of projects happening, construction activity was strong, and then March, right? The industry on the whole, our firms here in town had that COVID scramble. And how do we adapt to this new regulations? We were considered an essential business, so that was great. We were able to move forward, but how do we operate? That was the big challenge. our friends at AGC of Missouri pulled the members similar to what David had to go through himself personally. AGC did it for us. So I'm going to go through and share some of the insights on the impact of COVID here on our local firms. So what you see here is the first one of the questions they asked: have you seen any delays or disruptions due to the pandemic? And 83% of firms had felt some delay and had been delayed or disrupted. Particularly, it was related to materials, and as the transportation and shipping of materials were delayed, as different organizations figured out how to continue their operations as well, and that trickled down into impact construction. The hardest thing for firms to navigate is people. How do you deal with the emerging CDC guidelines, which seem to continue to change and continue to change, but to do our business safely and put construction in place where we could. Some of our regions at McCarthy, we struggled because the local authorities also enforced higher guidelines, more stringent requirements. And so we had to figure out how to navigate those, but we are also able to take advantage of that and take advantage of some of those best practices and how do we continue to do our business safely and keep our workers safe. So the next question that AGC asked, or what I thought we'd share, is related to postponing and canceling work. 85% of organizations had at least one project postponed or canceled. Of those respondents, the majority, though, were short-lived, and most expect their work to pick back up this year if they haven't yet done so. But 37% of the respondents said their projects are going to push at least into 2021. The next one is work stoppages or pauses. Many firms had to make a decision to furlough employees, similar to our design partners. And layoffs also occurred, as we saw several firms releasing both their salaried and their trades personnel early in the pandemic. We didn't have to implement any of those measures here at McCarthy, but it's definitely been a concern, and we'll talk about how people are starting to pick up and bring people back to work. And that's what this is here. So construction employment, if you look back over the past 8 months, this chart illustrates the strength of the Missouri construction market. You see Missouri is the red line and the U.S. is in black. And if you take a look at April, which is when we had the big dip, and then the state began to quickly outpace the nation in getting back to work. So we did have a pause. There were furloughs, there were layoffs, but as you see that we are in a growth mode and a hiring mode consistently across the construction market. Looking at just, again, the past 8 months, every market in construction experienced a decline. There were some bright spots in a few areas. Residential also already touched on as well, but the reduction of interest rates. The K-12 market has been a great bright spot, both nationally here and locally. Bond issues in April got a lot of support as parents figured out the importance of and the value of their children being educated in school in lieu of their homes, and they supported those bond issues. But hardest hit were retail, higher ed, hospitality, consequential to the stay-at-home orders and the impact to those industries. Materials and labor, the input to construction, they were on the rise over the past several months. So April, kind of everything flatlined, everything kind of paused, and then the cost of materials, the cost of labor are starting to go up. You see on the blue line on the bottom, which is the bid prices, those are still flat. So that big delta is what's about to start moving forward through the pipeline, because firms have been absorbing those additional costs to try to get work and make sure that they were secure. And now that's going to start to get distributed back to owners in higher prices. So summary of 2020 so far, there's a quick decline in employment. It's rebounded significantly. The PPP loans helped a number of businesses maintain those operations as that pause happened. Residential with the interest rates has been a big bright spot, and the non-residential uncertainty is something we are all closely monitoring. So 2021 going forward, let's look there. Okay, back to the AGC survey. Okay, a good news is that over a third of the respondents indicate they're back to normal business. just under the US average overall. The majority, 50%, are not as optimistic and are struggling to get their arms around what and when they will get back to where they were just a year ago. 42% of firms plan to grow their head count over the next year, and that supports the market volume projections I'm going to share here shortly. You'll note again that this growth is outpacing. This is in the AEC of Missouri membership. It's outpacing the nation overall, which you can see over at the left at 37%. So just slightly outpacing the nation here. At McCarthy, we do monitor all of the data sources and the metrics and try to keep our arms around what's happening in the marketplace as well, so we can forecast it in our pricing and in our business. I shared the snapshot from the AGC about the pricing impact as February to October, and the graphic here is a further breakdown. So we kind of look at those construction inputs because they're really going to translate to bid costs, and understand by market where we see that most volatility. Construction inputs overall are up from the 3-year average, and we expect them to continue to grow strongly over the next 12 months, particularly given those challenges with production and transportation and the strong demand in residential and non-residential construction both. When we look at the data this way, that residential and multifamily inputs will continue to be the leading drivers for materials and labor to meet within the demands for new construction. Another way that perspective that we look at is which is called the Purchasing Managers Index. That's an indicator that summarizes whether market conditions, as viewed by purchasing managers, an entity, are considered to be expanding, staying the same, or contracting. And if you look at the chart, anything above a 50 is growth, and below that is loss. So the evaluation, if you look at November, it's at 75.6 for the state of Missouri. So purchasing managers believe that we are strongly growing in this region and outpacing expectations for the nation, which is in the blue. And I just wanted to look at comparatively. So if you look over on the right side of your screen here, this is Missouri, this is the Midwest, and the data for the Purchasing Managers Index in the month of November for the states within the Midwest. And Missouri is the leader and predictor of growth and stability within the Midwest. We're at 75.6, the nation is at 57.5. So we are in a good spot here. And St. Louis. We've talked about a lot of the projects. Larry shared some. Jason's talked about some of those things too. There's a lot of activity underway or in front of us. Most of you know about the Business Journal's Crane Watch, and they do a good job of bringing together all of the projects that they're aware of and translating them. And so the visual at the right of your screen is the projects that are under construction right now in the St. Louis region. And then you can see there's a ton of dots on there. There's a lot of activity. But if you look below, which is the proposed projects, it's not quite as dense. Not to say that it's not coming, but it's not right where it is, where it has been. The left side of the screen you see here is my abbreviated listing of some of the more significant happenings that are in front of us as contractors and trade partners. Some of those projects have been awarded to a contractor, some are yet to be awarded. Some are out to bid right now or coming out to bid right now. So each one of these are major efforts, big significant opportunities in the region, and these are continuing to drive our growth. So our 2 cents at McCarthy is continuation of the good news. We aren't seeing significant delays at this time in materials. We're not seeing pricing volatility at this time. There have been, however, a lot of bid activity. I mentioned that people we're buying out a lot of work right now. Firms who were anxious to make sure they had backlog are getting full, and we're going to start to see those price increases pushing through. 2021 and beyond will continue. We expect to see quite a bit of activity, particularly in the infrastructure, healthcare, education, science, and technology. These markets are going to be adjusting to the pandemic, how they support and adopt to the new normal. And then the volume and activity, just based kind of on the stuff that's in the pipeline right now, will be strong here locally for at least the next 2 years. I just want to say, if you're an owner, now's the time to buy, because the prices are right, but it's going to go up pretty shortly here. looking nationally here, a lot is going to depend on the vaccine and getting back to normal, whatever that is. Uncertainty will continue to drag many sectors, and it will soften construction investment for some. Institutional clients like healthcare and higher ed will be evaluating lost revenue and what they can do to support their continuous construction needs. They still have those needs. But so it's a matter of when, not if. Retail, lodging, and entertainment will be similarly impacted. They've had the losses. How do they come back? Larry showed a great example of how you can innovate to be able to adapt, and that's a great example. It's likely to see continued spend within government, particularly in infrastructure, but new administration yet to be determined what the full plan is there. So we're continuing to monitor what that is. Staying on the big picture focus, FMI does a good long-range forecast, and this is by, on the chart you've seen here is green line is residential markets, dark blue is non-residential, and light blue, which is non-buildings, which is infrastructure. And starting at infrastructure, it's pretty much steady state beyond 2020. So FMI goes up to 2024. Nationally, though, FMI predicts construction declines in non-residential and buildings markets for the next few years, and then starting to come back around 2022. This is nationally. It's kind of contrary to what we're seeing here in St. Louis. But it's worth noting overall, if you look at 2020 and draw the line over to 2009, we are actually stronger and anticipated to be in a good state going forward. One more eye chart for you today. This is Dodge. So Dodge has just released its long-range prediction by market. And the slides, I think Kelly shared that, the slides will be available, so you don't have to, I'm not going to read through all of these things, but overall summary is that construction starts are going up 4% overall 2021, 3% of that coming from non-residential, 7% in that non-building infrastructure markets. Lodging is going to continue to struggle to come back, as well as amusement and recreation due to those lost revenues to demand. I mentioned that earlier. Healthcare and education are also going to be falling off slightly, but then rebounding as they make their adjustments. Related to office, many corporations are reevaluating how and what and when they go back to work, and there's the obvious impact on construction here. There's a lot of speculation about the new corporate workplace. Our design and development friends are hard at work on figuring out what that looks like. But the bottom line from both FMI and Dodge is that we will see a slight contraction in 2021, 22, but most markets will be coming back close to the 2019 levels by 2024. Ooh, there we go. So that's it. I know there's a lot to throw, and I hope to answer any other questions in Q&A. I got my email on the slide. Feel free to reach out to me directly, and I just want to say thank you for everybody, for all that everyone is doing to keep our community going and keeping our construction professionals safe and healthy.
Great, thanks, Erin. That was a lot of information, but it was really interesting. Thanks for being thorough. So again, our chat room is open. We've had a couple of good questions come up. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I know Jason's on. Hopefully Larry is coming back online here. The first question we've got is more of an economic question, but it's a good one. I've had kind of similar thoughts. The national construction forecasts are predicting a W recovery versus a V recovery. Would like to know if any of the panelists have an opinion on that.
Hey, Monica, I'll
Yeah.
take that real quick. That was my dead cat bounce comment. So it was interesting
right.
about the time that I said that, someone asked that question. I think it was Steve Faust at Icon. I hope we don't see that W-shaped recovery. I hope it's more of a V. And so far, I think everything that we're seeing, it's been a quick 6 weeks as far as, and it's coincidental somewhat, I think, with when I made that comment about the election and the vaccine announcement 2 days later. I'm not pinning everything on that, but some of it's, I'm sure, coincidental, but it also might be that some of the clients had their fingers on a button and sent a RFP out a couple of days later when they felt comfortable about things. So I just hope that momentum continues, especially with the vaccine being rolled out this week, and get through the holidays and the first of the year. I certainly hope that it's a V-shaped recovery and not a W. So.
Great, thanks. I'd love to hear from the other panelists. Jason, I mean, you've been working close with the pandemic team as well as, you know, other economists in the region. Any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, no, I think, who I follow a lot is Jim Bullard at the Fed, who's spoken on this. And I think he has consistently interpreted the data as a V recovery.
Great. And Larry, you know, you've got that national, I think, viewpoint. Any comments?
No, I don't know what would drive it into a W. I'm just, other than some other scare or all of a sudden the vaccine didn't work and people were uncertain again. I think the thing I'm seeing is more and more certainty is coming into our lives, and certainty means willingness to take chances and make decisions. And so it shouldn't drive that around. I mean, that's how I would view it.
Great. Erin, any last comments on that question?
No, I think that the data seems to support that it'll continue consistently moving forward and growing. So maybe some markets are going to struggle more than others, but not as a region overall.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in that I think everybody would have some good comments on is respect to our cluster strategy, particularly logistics and supply chain. St. Louis developing kind of a hub expertise in that. Where do you guys see us as in that sector going forward? Larry, maybe you take this one first, because I know you had some success with these types of projects.
Well, I mean, you know, the massive growth of the e-commerce industry is not going anywhere anytime soon, and we're starting to see it get closer and closer to its final destination. So you're seeing more and more projects of it here, and there's a handful of more Amazon projects that's followed by others. And the bigger markets I was in before, Atlanta, South Carolina, Portland, Seattle, you know, they were the primary targets, and now they're going to secondary markets. And as long as you're on a good highway system, you'll be fine. I think these last mile facilities are the things that are really trying to figure out, and no one's really quite figured that out yet. And so I think you'll see a lot of older buildings repurposed for that. I think there's an opportunity there for a lot of people once the companies figure it out. You know, Amazon tends to be the leader, and then right behind it, we'll do deals with Home Depot and Lowe's and all the other people who are in the retail industry behind it. You know, Walmart's finally gotten its act together. It really looks like an Amazon now. If you order stuff from Walmart, it comes from everywhere but Walmart, you know. So, you know, I think that future is really good. The question will be is who wants the warehouses in their backyard? And so, you know, you'll get pushback from a lot of people who don't want to see the warehouses there. But, you know, the world's changed. It's a necessary evil. We think about designing buildings now where a big part of your design has to be where do the packages go and how do you keep all these delivery people out of the middle of the space where all your employees are. And so, you know, I think it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Great, thanks. Jason, maybe something from your perspective. I know there's been some cluster analysis with regard to the jobs plan.
Yeah, so it's important when you look at metropolitan scale economies, you know, you typically compete globally on a few sectors where you can have global excellence, because you can't, it doesn't mean other things don't matter, but on the things you can impact collectively, you want to understand which industry sectors are rapidly growing, globally significant, and concentrate your efforts on those, because they tend to disproportionately impact the fortunes of the metro, and that's about making choices. The transportation, distribution, and logistics sector, not surprisingly, shows up when you do a quantitative assessment of the strengths of the metropolitan region. And so we need to organize for success around that and execute and focus our efforts, our business recruitment efforts. You know, these dollars aren't unlimited. And so we got to be reaching those decision makers that understand the value proposition that we have here for those. And then I would also highlight, is comes out in the 2030 jobs plan, there's three, what Bruce Katz calls convergent sectors, where you start to see multiple traditional industries converging in new ways. and that is ag tech, geospatial, and fintech, which is financial services and the IT industry convergence. And so geospatial in particular has a high convergence with location-based data in the transportation sector. And when you start to think of a region that is the home to the NGA West headquarters, home to the geospatial-enabled Precision Agriculture at Climate Corp, which is now part of Bayer Crop Science, home to Transcom at Scott Air Force Base, home to the largest operator of vehicle fleets on the planet in Enterprise Holdings, and the maker of the most sophisticated aircraft in the world with Boeing Defense, where location-based data is driving the autonomous technologies that goes into those aircraft. You know, we are at a major convergence point between transportation, distribution, and logistics in the geospatial sector. That's exciting. And this report really calls for us to link and align those assets, because sometimes we think of transportation as just warehouses. It's more than that. I mean, we're a large maker of vehicles, aviation, transit, and the convergence with geospatial, I think, holds promise. And that's where innovation occurs, is that the convergence of industries like that. And we need to harness that outside of those silos so that we reap the job gains that we can get here.
Fantastic. I love it. It sounds like a great forward-looking opportunity for us. David or Aaron, any other comments on logistics? Aaron, you know, you guys operate in 28 states nationally. Are you seeing any other logistics synergies in other markets that you can compare to St. Louis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are. Well, they really covered a lot of what we're experiencing here. But we're in a good region, and we have a lot of infrastructure in place to support the growth and to expedite any of the projects as they come up. So I don't really have much to add there.
Okay, David, any last words on logistics?
The only comment I would have is I live on the Illinois side, so I see a lot of the warehouses being built at the 270, 111 corridor, and I know both the state of Missouri and state of Illinois are looking to improve the 270 corridor, and some of that construction is already occurring on the Missouri side. So as long as we get our infrastructure upgraded to handle the additional trucking capacity, I think we'll be in fine shape.
Great. Follow-on question to logistics was, where's St. Louis kind of stack up with advanced manufacturing? So I'll let Jason maybe start with that, and then Larry and Aaron and David.
Happy to. Again, the Bruce Katz team on the 2030 jobs plan started with a quantitative diagnostic of where we are and what those industries are, again, that we need to lean into that will disproportionately impact the long-term growth in the economy. Advanced manufacturing and production, as I just put in the chat box, is one of the clusters that were identified, again, based on actual data, and that will be one that we lean into over the next decade and focus our efforts.
Great. I mean, I know anecdotally from the Missouri Partnership, we're still seeing strong activity in manufacturing from national site consultants, particularly in the food and chemical industries. So I don't think it's going away. Larry, any comments?
I will tell you in all candor and honesty, it's hard to get site selectors to focus on us because we're not a right to work state, neither is Illinois. And so a lot of times that box gets thrown off. We're not even included on the list. And so we're going to need some other successes to demonstrate to people that the cost of labor is not disproportionate. In fact, we're very competitive. It's just without that box being checked, you just get thrown off a lot of lists. And so we'll have to find a creative way to get back on those lists. We just will. Otherwise, you're just not going to see a lot of people consider us. And that's part of the problem why you're not seeing it here. If they would actually give us a consideration, we'd be able to tell a really good story, you know?
Yeah, but you've had a few successes. I mean, SKF's a good example, maybe.
Yeah, no, and we have. I'm not telling them, but there's just a ton we're not getting to see. It's just whether it's just the odds are tougher because you get less chances.
Got it. Aaron or David, any comments regarding manufacturing?
I would say that Larry is right, that we see more activity in those non-union markets where the labor is lower. It is a competitive advantage for those producers. But with what we saw over the course of this pandemic and the drain on supplies that we all personally experienced, we do see and anticipate more onshoring, particularly related to pharmaceutical production and medical related things that we all need to sustain that we were not able to get our hands on. We expect to see that activity, and it is one of the sectors that we focus on within our organization. So we are seeing quite a bit of activity here locally as well as nationally.
And I would add, Monica, you know, I think a part of being a growing economy is figuring out what do we want to be. Not every deal will be a great fit for us, and that's okay. You know, it's about being who we want to be and attracting that business here. There's a lot of pie to go after. And when I think of, you know, the men and women that build the Chevy Colorado in Wentzville, you know, I come from a union family. 3 generations of my family made steel at Granite City Steel. And that gave me a life they couldn't have. When I think of the men and women that helped produce the first COVID vaccine on the planet, the work that they did in advanced production at Chesterfield, and you know, when I look around this region, you know, we're producing and making some of the most sophisticated advanced equipment, solutions, pharma in the world. And those create living wages and middle-class supporting opportunities for us. Let's lean into that. We're doing that very well in the bi-state metro. And there's a lot of companies that are wanting to make those investments too, that want that skilled workforce that we can produce. And I think let's focus on what we want to be, not what we're not, or some other set of opportunities, because otherwise you end up chasing everything.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting in any way that we do a right to work state. I'm just saying that if you go look at these places that are getting built otherwise, their wages aren't any less when they finally get it built. They get organized, they have unions, they all do that. There's nothing wrong. I'm just suggesting we got to find a way to tell the story that it's okay to put us on the list. It's just a chance to get on the list. We can pick and choose who we want. I'm not at all suggesting that we be a right to work state, and I hope I didn't come off that way. What I'm suggesting is that when you drill down and get on the list, we tell a great story. It really doesn't cost any more to make a car or a truck here or anything here than it does in any of these other states. You just got to get on the darn list, and not everybody lets you that way.
Yeah, and we had let the capacity, I mean, part of it, you know, we mentioned the Missouri Partnership. I mean, it's extraordinary. If you look at the Nashvilles, the Denvers, the Indies, they've had decade-long commitments to best-in-class business recruitment teams that go out and market the region, shape the reputation of the region, and find those deals and build a strong pipeline. It's fairly extraordinary that, you know, less than 24 months ago, we recreated that regional capacity as the Alliance STL. I mean, it had degraded to a point that it was a fraction. So it's, if we want to be in the game to recruit new business, you know, we have to have that regional capacity and capability. Again, Larry, I didn't interpret your comment as necessarily saying that, but you know, sometimes we hear, you know, well, if only this and that, and there's often few silver bullets, but business, in my experience, and I worked when I was with Governor Nixon, when we went up to Detroit to recruit both Ford to Claycomo and win the Chevy Colorado for Wentzville, often they're really just looking at the total cost of doing business. Labor is one variable, cost of energy, stability of energy, and the infrastructure around that is a cost. Resiliency of the grid is very, very important, particularly for advanced manufacturing. And we got just so many strengths to compete on those deals. I look forward to doing that as a community in an even more effective way going forward.
Great. Yeah, I think I appreciate the dialogue. I think one of the other challenges we have in the urban core is just the lack of large scale sites, Larry. So maybe that's, you know, an opportunity going forward. But I appreciate everybody, you know, I think one of the common themes coming out of the Q&A is that the need to be focused and be intentional. So I appreciate everybody's comments regarding that. A couple more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Crime was brought up. I think, you know, Jason, your point that we all need to be, you know, and Larry too, like we need to be cheerleaders. And so it's hard, you know, how can we approach telling that positive story? Because honestly, if you look at crime nationally, it's a problem everywhere. It's not just a problem here. It is happening in every major metro across the country. And so how do we change that narrative?
Well, personally, I think that, the world lives and dies in the social media realm now. So everybody Googles and looks for things before they come and talk to you. And we've got to find a way professionally to get your message out in the social media. So when they Google St. Louis, that's not the first thing they get. And that can be done with professionals working on that very problem. And so that's really something we need to do that we haven't. But I'm pretty convinced that if Jason's new organization had somebody in the social media assignment that's all they did, they might have a huge change.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's it's a complex issue, right? And I always like the Hugh Grant, the former CEO at Monsanto, used to say, you can't communicate your way out of a problem that your behavior got you into. So I think there's a role that we lead forward with a strong communication and a unified voice about the strong assets we have. It's unhealthy, just like you don't go into a job interview and lead with your weaknesses, you lead with your strengths. We're all imperfect. And so I do think the region must lead with its strengths and not be defined by its problems, but by its opportunities and its potential. That said, we do have to work in civically healthy ways to combat some of those challenges that we have, whether it's racial inequities, lack of growth, or public safety. And I think the economic development community needs to be a strong voice in combating the actual public safety challenges so that we live in safe and equitable communities. That needs to be done in partnership, though, because I don't think the economic development community, while it clearly has a linkage and has a huge impact, as we're seeing with Centene, on our ability to create, retain, and grow jobs in the region, solving and creating safer communities requires us to work in partnership with public officials that are elected in public safety. I think it requires us to work with those in the mental health and those that provide the safety net so that we can work on crime prevention while also enforcing the law. And then, creating economic opportunities, as we know, is one of the critical ways that we help people reach their full potential and, have a life that does not involve crime. So it's just, it is one we've got to be a seat at the table. I don't know that the economic development community has been a strong voice. I just think we need to not show up as though we know all the answers to that, but on an issue like that, we've got to be working around the table with some of those critical community partners in civically healthy ways. And I look forward to being a part of that conversation as we go forward. Not just the conversation, but the solution set. We have to put solutions into place, not just talk about it. And I think that's going to be a very, very important issue in 2021.
Great, thank you for that. We'll transition over to a question regarding vocational training, which I think is important to everybody in the council. Maybe Aaron or David, you could weigh in on sort of what 2021 looks like for that, for the trades.
Well, I'll start. I mean, the demand is strong and it continues to grow. And there have been a number of efforts over the years to try to attract people into our industry, apprenticeship programs, those kinds of things. The city of St. Louis has done a great job of implementing those apprenticeship requirements into the work, so that drives people towards that business. McCarthy was an early adopter to the STL Works and working with the RBC in that case on that initiative. there have been a number of initiatives over the years to try to develop and grow and attract people into the construction industry related to the trades. I think it's reminiscent, though, to kind of the way we've approached economic development. It's been what McCarthy does, what Clayco does, what Wilson does. Everybody's doing things independently. There's definitely an opportunity to try to align some things so that we're more coherent as an industry. We're not to that yet. So that is probably the biggest opportunity that I foresee for us to really make an impact on that effort. But in the meantime, we are all continuing our diligent efforts to try to grow and attract people into our business. It is a very solid business. It's a career opportunity. And as we talked about the market opportunity here, there is a lot there for people to get involved with quickly.
Great, thanks. David, any other comments?
It's a little different on the design side of things, where most of the employees have professional degrees. But I was thinking back to 2008 and the Great Recession, where we lost a lot of folks in the industry who left because they couldn't find jobs. And I'm hopeful that doesn't happen again. And then, I think as a whole, at least on the architecture side of things, and somewhat even on the engineering side of things, I've seen great advancement as far as women in the industry and women-owned firms, but we're not seeing as much still as on the minority side of things. And so we have outreach programs within the AIA to try to improve minority participation in our industry, and hopefully that will continue and get stronger as time goes on.
Great. Yeah, Jason, I know Valerie Patton, of course, is probably really dialed into all of that effort. Any comments?
Yeah, on
vocational, minority participation and vocational training.
Yeah, I think it's in the trade specifically. Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity. And I think, workforce overall, there's a lot of great individual efforts. I'm not sure we've managed them as an ecosystem and communicated them to the people we are trying to serve in very crisp and clear ways. And I think when I'm talking to my family about this stuff, talking about ecosystems and all this, the fancy language sometimes can be off-putting and almost make it feel too exclusive. But I think on the backside, those of us all involved that have the privilege of being civic leaders together, I think looking at it from an ecosystem approach so people understand very crisply what those pathways or on-ramps into prosperity can be, particularly if you've been left out of the economy and faced structural barriers to reaching your full potential. I think we need to get that at a more simple level for folks. And there's great, like the BUD program. You've got what Rankin is doing. I think Launch Code, Claim Academy, some of those are examples. Rung, the new Rung for women. I mean, that is an incredible workforce strategy. Best in the country, I would argue, for what they're doing and the way they're approaching it. I don't know that we've done as good of a job of communicating where 1 + 1 = 3. And here is our systematic approach with different on-ramps for helping people move from where they are. The community college with the plant science program. I mean, oh my gosh, that has turned lives around and taken people from careers where they were not reaching their full potential to be lab techs and those sorts of things. Quick retraining and upskilling. I think those are all opportunities that we need to act with intention around and really communicating those in effective ways to the people we're trying to serve and not make that as complicated as it is.
That's great. I know Delmar Devine, I think Maxine Clark's got some efforts underway with respect to that too. So that kind of drives me thinking about early childhood, but that's a whole nother conversation. Another question popped up for Jason regarding how ethnic communities fit into the strengths, employment and job opportunities in the region. Who represents the ethnic community interests in terms of cultural diversity? Any comments there? Of course, we have the Mosaic Project, which has been very successful, but how are you going to incorporate that into your new entity?
Yeah, I think if we look at the way I think of it, okay, the economy in St. Louis needs to grow. We know it's underperformed its assets and it's underperformed even national growth. We quantitatively had very strong momentum going into the pandemic. And then obviously that's impacted everybody, but the elevated level of growth going into the pandemic was very real. So we have to grow, because the if there's not opportunity or pie to share, it gets very difficult to combat the inequities we face. The second question, where you see a philosophical shift in, I think, what's been laid out with Greater St. Louis Inc., is inclusive growth, where you have the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion converging with traditional job creation practice. And in this, we've Val Patton, who was doing inclusive growth before that was even a term, one of the great civic leaders of our region, will become the chief DE&I officer in Greater St. Louis Inc. in managing those cross-cutting strategies, so that we're working to reduce barriers and being intentionally inclusive in the growth that we create. We have a strong set of intermediaries on the ethnic chamber community. Carlos Ramirez, many of you know, I just spoke to him last night on some issues we were working on. And we need to have strong partnerships as we move forward with the ethnic chambers. The mosaic is extraordinary. I mean, the immigrant community here, the foreign-born community, is several multiples more likely to create a business than the native-born community. It's been a big part of our entrepreneurial resurgence. We need to embrace that. I expect we're going to recruit from the full diversity of the business community into GSL. That means in a board, in the investors, in the teams that we put together to drive the agenda forward. The last thing our region needs is one more dividing line in the business community by size of business, ability to pay, and all of the other things that have traditionally divided up our business community. Let's come together and embrace that full diversity. Our startup tech community, often totally left out of the conversation, and it's like one of the great sources of pride and momentum regionally, as we just saw with Entrepreneur Magazine having us as the #1 innovation hub.
Great. Any other comments from Aaron on David on that? And then I've got one more question and then we'll wrap up. Okay, and Jason, this is probably more for you too, but you've got a lot of people interested in what you have to say today. And I had this question too, how, I think one of the biggest challenges for St. Louis now in this new world is the whole urban versus rural dynamic that we're living in, whether you're in Illinois or Missouri, it's there, right? So what are your thoughts around how you're going to position our region with respect to that conversation?
Well, I think, I appreciate who raised that. I mean, in today's political climate is very challenging, to say the least. And I think it's why you have to have a more unified private sector leadership, because oftentimes public officials, who do we work with? It's like, which of the 5 groups is in charge of this issue? Or, where you intermediate those interests. So I do think there are good people and they want to work, but we've made it very difficult to know what the agenda is, what are the regional priorities. That's different than individual priorities. Again, I want to be very clear about that. There are certain things that we can only do together that none of us can do individually. That's what GSL is focusing on, not individual needs that individual businesses can work on. I have a unique perspective on this, I think, having served in Jefferson City and as the director of the Missouri Technology Corporation and as the director of the Missouri Department of Economic Development. I had a really unique perspective as the first openly gay person a governor had ever appointed to a cabinet post in Missouri history in a rural-dominated legislature. And I will tell you personally, seeing what happened with Mayor Pete at the Department of Transportation, I never got a confirmation vote 10 years ago, served officially for 30 days because they weren't going to have a gay guy in charge. I hope we've advanced as a country, but I'll tell you what, we still managed to get things done behind the politics of it. And some of my closest friends from my time in Jefferson City are Republicans. They were farmers. They were far more conservative. I think we need to not be throwing bombs at each other and 180-word messages on Twitter. That is not going to build a relationship. My approach down there was to go door to door, find common ground, and figure out what we can get done. And I will tell you, people said I would never get done the Missouri Technology Corporation, which was taking state money, investing it in high-tech startups, largely concentrated in the urban core of Kansas City at the time, Kansas City and St. Louis. And by the way, some of that early money, that was the first check into Benson Hill. That was the first check into Gainsight. It was one of the first checks into Lockerdome. It was the first check into Confluence Life Sciences. It was the first check into Arch Grants, because we got that done. And people said, rural legislature will never go along with it. I think you can build relationships, but it's going to start with leading like we want a relationship and find out what that common ground is. It's tough. It's difficult. I get it. I've been down there. But I think we need to lead by example and start building those bridges. And Mike Parson, he was in the Senate when I was down there, you know, and he was one of the key players that helped us get all that tech investment done. And he didn't need to do that for the district he served at the time. He did it because he thought it was, he especially liked ag tech. That was a particular interest of his as a farmer. So some of it's style, but you know, we're going to figure out how to make that work. And I think there are going to be times where we have to make demands. This is what we need. And I will tell you, like we had with Medicaid transformation, if you can't get it done in the legislature, I think the private sector says, okay, well, we're going to take this directly to the people, which is what we did to get it done. And there's going to be times where we just have to do that. And I'm A-okay with that. And we're going to have to, you know, just again, I probably said more than you wanted to hear, but I feel very strongly on this subject.
No, it was fantastic. You're the right man for this job. I'm super excited. What a great way to close out the year. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Jason, Aaron, David, and Larry. I want to thank everybody that registered for this program. I hope you found it to be of value. As we said earlier, the slides will be available. I do ask everybody to take a moment to fill out the survey. You will be sent a link. So if you please fill out that survey. The Training and Education Committee actually reviews those every month, and we hold them, you know, we take it seriously. I want to thank Kelly Jackson as Executive Director this year. I want to thank Kevin Studer as our board chair for the council. We've got some interesting programs coming up for 2021. So please be on the lookout for that. We're looking forward to our golf tournament and our clay shoot. And I believe next month's program, I should know this. You'll get an email. It's being planned. It should be a great program. And thanks so much. Oh, I think we were going to hang on to some folks wanted to network. So there it is. January 21st, speaking of change, communicating in dynamically changing environments. So we've got a variety of different people that specialize in communications. I know we've got June Fowler from BJC. We're working on getting someone from St. Louis County and St. Louis City on basically communicating through crisis. So I think you'll all find some value in that. February 13th, of course, is our safety forum. We've got diversity town hall meetings, best practices, and we're hoping to do a tour of the new COCA facility. If not April, it will be later this summer. So with that, Jason, again, thanks for your time. I believe we are good to close out. All right. Take care.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you that want to stay in network away. Good to see everybody. Take care and have a good holiday.
You too.
Thank you, Monica.
Great job, guys. How are you guys doing? David, Aaron?
So far, so good. And yourself?
I am hanging in there, so can't complain.
I'm going to have to find a different program to use next year. That's 2 years in a row. My slides in advance. I don't know what's going on. It just,
It's called
doesn't like-
technology, and it
doesn't
fails.
like a
It keeps
crowd,
us
I guess.
humble. It keeps
unbelievable.
us humble.
We had a dry run yesterday and it worked fine. I ran through the slides twice today before the call to work out any bugs, and sure enough, So very frustrating, but oh well,
Well,
such is life.
you handled it with grace, so it worked. We got to see him.